Hi there, it's Marzena. My last project, the Hornet, was a pretty easy one in my opinion. I knew exactly what I wanted to do with his design and how I wanted to do it. So even if this was my first ever fully male custom, it was pretty easy and relaxing to make. Yeah, that's it. Easy and relaxing. And where's the challenge in that? So, since apparently I like challenges more than I like myself, let's make something that I have no idea how to make. Let's make a jellyfish girl. I knew that I want this girl to be a little bit like transparent, so I chose one of the ghost monster idols, Kiyomi Hunterly. It isn't really a translucent plastic, but it has this look to it. If you are new to my channel, this is how I prepare my dolls for the customization. Firstly, with very sharp scissors, I cut off the doll's hair as close to the scalp as possible. Then I submerge the head in a freshly boiled water, which serves two purposes. Primo, it softens the vinyl and makes the decapitation much easier, lowering possibility of breaking the neck or the neck pack. Secundo, the heat also melts the glue that holds the remaining hair plugs. Now I can scrap the head from the inside and extract the nasty mass through the neck hole. This part can be pretty disgusting, so it is one of my favorites. When the head is properly bald, I can remove the factory paint with 100% acetone. Surprisingly, this specific doll has molded on eyelashes. Whoever thought that this will be a great feature to add to the face sculpt, screw you! I literally hate it. Most doll repainters would now start customizing their dolls, but not me. I don't like the body to head ratio on monster high dolls, so I use a slow shrinking method to shrink the head for better proportions. Head shrinking is not mandatory and it takes a lot of time, but for me it always pays off. To reconnect the shrunken head with the body, I needed to trim down the neck pack, sand down the neck a little bit, and widen the neck hole. But before I popped the head back on the neck, I got rid of those molded on eyelashes. This is how I deal with limitations. I don't take them too well. With the help of a hairdryer, I popped the head back on the neck. Cool. I didn't like the transition between the head and the neck, so I sanded it down to make it look a little bit smoother. Then I also sanded down her scalp and hairline to make the hair holes less visible. Instead of jumping straight to the face-up, I decided to sculpt the jellyfish bell first, so I covered the head with a plastic wrap to prevent the clay from sticking to the vinyl, and I sculpted the bell from Super Sculpey. Yeah, I wanted it to be removable, at least for now. First, I sculpted just the cap, and I texture it a bit so the next layer of clay will have something to grab on. Then I removed the cap from the doll, gently, not to squish it, and I baked it in the oven following the instructions on the packaging. After the cap cooled down, I sculpted the brim. I was adding more and more clay until the overall shape of the bell looked okay. Then I put it back to the oven for the second baking. As a last phase of sculpting, I added some details so it would look less like a hat and more like an actual jellyfish bell. Before the final baking, I also added a thick stem on top of the bell. That's right. And straight to the oven. You didn't think that this was the final bell, did ya? I made a mold and filled it with silicone. I waited half an hour more or less, and when the silicone was completely cured, I released the mold, made some incisions, and removed the clay sculpture. Great! Now we need some resin. In a mixing cup, I mixed my epoxy resin and I added some coloring to give my bell nice opalescent blue tint. Used my vacuum chamber to evacuate as many air bubbles as possible. Then I poured the resin into the mold. While the resin was curing, I could go back to the actual doll. Finally, time for the face-up. I sprayed 3 layers of Mr. Super Clear UV Cat flat varnish, cause without it neither the pencils nor pastels would stick to the vinyl face. I have my own order of steps when I'm doing face-ups. On a first layer, I always put just pastel shading and blushing. Some doll artists would start with marking the eye shape, but I like to make my face less flat before I jump into drawing with pencils. As I said many times already, I really like drawing smaller eyes on my dolls. When I started with this hobby, my goal was to learn how to squeeze as many realistic details into the eyes as possible. So bigger eyes, which means bigger canvas, felt like something nice. But as they say, the Lord works in mysterious ways, and here I am shrinking my dolls' heads and their eyes even further. And here's the moment I realized that I screwed up her eye placement. And one eye was way further from the nose bridge than the other. It was like 3 or 4 layers of MSC deep into the face-up, and I really didn't want to wipe the whole thing clear to start over. So I made a bold decision and I used just a teeny tiny amount of acetone on a microbrush applicator to wipe off the other corner of the left eye, the one that was further from the nose, and I extended the other corner of the right one. Luckily that worked and I didn't destroy my current progress. So, the eye size. Yeah, smaller and more proportional eyes are definitely a big part of my style now. And with this in mind, I would like to talk a little more about the new Generation 3 of Monster High dolls. I already said, I guess like 2 videos ago, that I'm not thrilled about the direction that the company is going. But that was just based on some leaked pictures. Now the dolls are already in stores, not in Poland, of course, because obviously, and we can see them very clearly. And I am just disappointed to the max. Those eyes are humongous, and the shapes are so pronounced. I guess Draculaura's face is more versatile, but Claudine and Laguna have even eyelids and waterlines sculpted. It will be a struggle for customizers who don't like to follow the guidelines. And don't even get me started on those creepy smiles. You may say, "Geez, girl, take a pill and chill out. Those are just toys for kids. What's the big deal?" Well, I am not mad at creators or anything. I just wish that they would understand the essence of those original characters and what made those lines so popular. And what made doll lines like Ever After High, Cave Club dolls or Enchantimals less popular. Are the new dolls cute? Sure. I know that a lot of doll customizers are in love with new faces and bodies, and I envy them. My style is just not good for those kind of molds. The face features are too cartoonish and childish, the bodies are weird to be honest. Love the diversity in body shapes, but the proportions are so off. They added additional joint in the torso, and yet they managed to make those torsos so short and small. I love the old, weird, out-of-the-box bodies with this almost creepy curvature of the spine. It makes them look so high fashion and ethereal. I'm just so sad that I will be stuck with old Monster High dolls until I run out. And then what? Barbies? I hate Barbies. I'm starting to feel scared that my years as a doll customizer might be counted. So, if you by any chance have a box of old Monster High dolls and would like to support my channel, just let me know. Of course, that's a joke. But is it really? I still would like to try to work on the new line if they will ever come to Poland. But I don't have high hopes. Anyway, the face-up was done, and here's the good old comparison. I love old Monster High dolls with shrunken heads. I established her final pose and glued her limbs in place with a super glue. Then I realized that I forgot to sand down the body first. Oh well, it was a little bit trickier without working joints, but I managed to sand down all the plastic seams, panties and factory numbers. And yes, I also forgot to protect her face under a plastic wrap, but I noticed it in the middle of the process. Yay me! I finished sanding the body, double-checked if I didn't forget about any other steps, and moved on to covering the joint gaps. I knew that if I use epoxy sculpt, I would have to use an opaque paint to color match it with the body. So I used UV resin this time with a drop of blue alcohol ink. Remember, this is not a tutorial. While working with resin, you probably should be wearing gloves. But this is just me, living on the edge and working with resin barehanded, like a true rebel that I am. I really tried not to touch it though. Resin is lava kinda game. I needed to work with several layers on the bigger gaps, such as the hip joints, to get those natural looking shapes. The UV torch was enough to make the resin hard, but it was still sticky, so I put the whole doll into my wash and cure machine for a few minutes. And just like with epoxy, I sanded down all the covered joints to make the transition as smooth as possible. I sprayed the body with 3 layers of Mr. Super Clear, and it was ready for some blushing and shading magic. All I had to do now was to draw some freckles here and there to match her face, and of course dust her with some pearly shimmer. Last layer of MSC, and she was ready to be freed from the plastic bag on her head. So, back to our belle. I could finally remove it from the mold, and it looked, well, could be better. I hoped for a clear look, and it looked like a lot of small air bubbles appeared on the resin surface. I thought it through, and I'm sure that I know why it happened. For this one, I just sanded down the surface really well, and with that I managed to get rid of majority of the bubbles. My vacuum chamber worked well, and the air didn't come from the resin itself, but from the silicone mold. I used silicone that should be mixed in a special vacuum mixer, so next time I will just put it in my chamber before pouring it on the model. With my airbrush, I used some transparent acrylic paints to shade my bell a little. Then I mixed some UV resin with resin pigments and I added some decorations to the bell. I used some UV color powders, so let's hope that our jellyfish girl will look awesome both in the full light and in the dark. I never worked with UV colors, so I really hope that it won't be a waste of time and effort. But I thought that if I won't at least try to make some fluorescent patterns on a jellyfish creature, someone will definitely point that out in the comments. I didn't have any UV paint, just this resin pigment, and drawing with resin isn't the easiest, but I did my best. When all the patterns were made, I squeezed a good amount of resin on top, spread it evenly, cured, and repeated this few times. My resin is lava game wasn't so easy here, and as someone mentioned under my last video, UV light is not the best for your skin, so I put on a glove this time. But only one. Once again, the resin cured well, but it was still kinda sticky. This happens sometimes, but I have no idea why. I wiped the whole bell with a nail degreaser. After that, it lost some of its shine, but it was too reflective in my opinion anyway, so I was happy with that. To attach the bell to my girl, I drilled a hole in her head. I bent a piece of thick wire and attached it to the bell temporarily with clay, so I won't make any mistake with permanent attachment. I sunk the wire in resin so it will be embedded firmly in the bell. The other end of the wire I also bent to create some retention, and I fixed the bell on the doll's head with both super glue and hot glue. When it cured, I filled the remaining gaps with UV resin. To blend the bell with the head even more, I used some pastel shading with the same colors I used on her face and body. Sealed everything with more resin. I also added tiny resin snake-like patterns on the head, coming from the bell. Definitely not because I smeared some resin on her forehead and needed to cover that somehow. Who do you think I am? Aren't you the cutest little thing? She was still far from being done, cause she was still missing her oral arms and tentacles. I will be using the method that I came up with while making fins for my goldfish mermaid. I spent 5 full days figuring out this method, so why not use it again? I took a long stripe of Warbler Transpa art, heated it up so it would lay flat, painted it with pink and blue translucent paint, and then I made the ruffles by just heating up a spot and shaping it with my fingers. When all the ruffles were done, I consciously heated up the arm again and I gave it its flowy shape while checking the placement with the doll. Warbler Transpa art is very flimsy, so I am using UV resin to turn it into a glass-like sturdy piece. Here it is after 2 layers on each side. Still not sturdy enough, but good for now, cause we need to add some flashy details. I took the same resin mixed with pearly and UV pigments that I used on the bell. I kept it in the dark of my drawer, so it was still perfectly usable. I used pinkish orange on the edges, yellow on dots, and some blue on vein-like accents. It took only like forever, but what is time when it comes to art? Anyway, I put few more layers of clear resin on top to make the arm hard enough to support the doll. And here it is, one arm ready. After 2 more days of work, I got all 3 arms and a bunch of tentacles. Assembling everything was kinda tricky, so I did it off camera. Groovy. The doll looks so complex itself that I decided to settle on a simple stand for her. I made some resin extensions on the oral arms, drilled the big holes in a wooden stand, attached the doll to the stand with loads of hot glue, and used some kitty litter and wood glue mixture for the base. On the next day, when the mixture was well cured, I covered the lower parts of oral arms with liquid mask and painted the stand with acrylics. I tried to give it this characteristic underwater look. Didn't like the wood pattern, so I covered it with black and gave it a little shimmer so it won't look too boring. I covered the stand with Liquitex gloss varnish. Then I removed the liquid mask, which was kinda tricky. Let's not forget about my logo. I finally glossed her eyes and lips, and tam-ta-da-dam! She was finally finished. So, here she is, my little jellyfish girl. It was kind of an experiment. It took so much time to make all the jellyfish parts with the UV patterns. Oh, wait! We need to test them out, don't we? So, let's change the scenery a bit. And let's turn off the light. Okay, is it working? No? Ah, just kidding, it's just my hands still covering the camera. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. I'm usually more humble about my works, but this looks so freakishly cool. I honestly think that she's one of my prettiest doll figurines, and I am so happy with her. I never liked Warbler transpa art, and I am so happy that I came up with the idea of covering it with resin. It is such a cool technique, and no one showed me that. It is mine. I figured it out on my own, to bring something that I have imagined into life. Being proud of yourself is the best feeling. I need to do that more. Okay, I'm bragging here, but I would love to hear what you think about this piece. Sorry to everyone who was waiting for something creepy for this year's spooky season. I'm still trying to catch up with my crazy schedule, so the creepy projects will start probably after Halloween. Once again, sorry, but I promise we will get there. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this process. Remember about my Q&A comment under my Centaur video that I will link in the description box. There you can ask me anything and I will try to reply to it as soon as I'm gonna reach 100k subscribers. If you want to help me in reaching that goal, make sure you are subscribed to my channel. Share my videos with friends and leave a comment. I read all of them. If you like this video, please give it a like and push that bell button for future notifications. Thank you guys for watching and see you soon! No.